fortunate here in California that running along our coast is one of the wildest places on earth, the California Current.
California is lucky that even though there's a lot of development, we still have these beautiful open spaces.
It's like having Yosemite and Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon right in your own backyard.
Along the California coast, teams of dedicated individuals log thousands of hours monitoring and researching some of the most special places on Earth. Stretching from Oregon to Mexico, these are the Yosemites of the seas, a string of underwater parks featuring a spectacular range of habitats. California boasts the nation's first and largest marine network, safeguarding 16% of its coastal waters. Half are off-limits to fishing and other harvesting activities. And while the road to protection hasn't been an easy one, California's new ocean legacy has begun to take shape. Monitoring methods are being fine-tuned, and communities are adapting. With support from fishermen like Jim Webb. On any given day, Jim can be found somewhere on or near the water.
I was kind of one of those people who seemed to think the ocean was limitless.
Starting in the 90s, however, Jim began to notice changes.
I actually began to see fish stocks in our area declining, and I thought that was pretty alarming. I didn't think I'd see that in my lifetime, but I did.
What Jim witnessed was indeed cause for concern. Declines were reported throughout the state, from rockfish to lobster. And further afield, additional impacts signaled deep problems for the world ocean. California took note. To stay ahead of the curve, in 1999, the state adopted the Marine Life Protection Act. The act was designed to modify and expand California's ocean conservation areas. One scientist involved from the beginning is marine ecologist Rick Starr.
The real value of the Marine Life Protection Act, it outlined some reasons for having marine protected areas, and therefore we could design them using a rational scientific strategy.
The network had to be created with input from a full range of citizens in an open, transparent process. In fact, it had proven key to success in other parts of the world. In the warm waters off Cabo Pulmo in Baja, Mexico, Scripps biologist Octavio Aburto Oropeza conducts his research.
Well, Cabo Pulmo is a national marine park since 1995. And the local people decided to stop all the extractive activities since then.
With impressive community participation, Cabo Pulmo witnessed a whopping 463% increase in fish biomass over 10 years. Like Mexico, the communities of California face their own set of challenges.
Resource management is a science and an art because we all have different values and different interests in using the marine resources. It's really important for everyone to understand what those different values are and to agree on the need to protect them and manage them wisely.
I think part of it was fear. Part of it was sort of a gut reaction against regulation. People don't like to be restricted. They view it as a curtailment of their freedom. And then there's the natural tendency to think that you're going to lose your favorite fishing area.
It's hard to say because, I'm a big fisherman myself, particularly spearfishing, and we just lost my favorite place to go spearfishing.
The MPA concept is without doubt a brilliant concept. Some other things that come along are not so attractive and not so good. I hope in the end it all evens out and we're all better off. Just as I feel sorry for any fish that we lose in the tagging process here today, I feel sorry for some of the people who've been hurt.
The Central Coast MLPA process was absolutely brutal and devastating to a lot of the small fleet that was chased outside of the bay. For me, at the end of my fishery, I was unable to economically survive the loss of that much fishing habitat. So I took my energy and effort, felt that I needed to bring transparency and honesty. It was just a hard process, so I had to get beyond it and move forward.
You know, that's where a stakeholder process is critical, because you get all those opinions on the table, you hash it out as best you can, you talk about it, and all of that takes place before lines go on the map and you start to actually design marine protected areas.
Despite the growing pains and controversies, strong partnerships formed. One example is the Collaborative Fisheries Research Program, where recreational fishermen have joined forces with scientists.
It was kind of a done deal they were going to implement one. And so I kind of got into it late, but my friend Jim Webb explained it to me pretty good. Seems like a good thing to do as far as I'm concerned.
Since I was involved in the groups that lobbied to have certain areas put aside, I felt a responsibility to determining whether or not these areas were functioning as originally designed.
Our scientists are working side by side with the fishermen, talking about the life history of fishes, talking about the values of marine protected areas, and we're seeing an increased stewardship ethic related to the monitoring and protection of those MPAs.
I saw what was happening with the fishery, so I thought, well, the only way I can make any difference is to get out and help.
It's labor-intensive work. Multiple teams are up at 4 a.m. and out fishing by daybreak. These tireless teams have logged 21,000 hours, tagged and released more than 40,000 fish from nearly 50 species. While it is still early, a variety of responses are being documented and some positive trends are emerging. For example, the mean lengths of lingcod and vermilion rockfishes are greater in the Año Nuevo protected sites than in the reference sites.
Surprisingly, we are seeing some trends that are occurring, some positive trends, if you will, and differences between areas inside and outside, and that is a surprise because of these long-lived species.
Meanwhile, in Moss Landing, at the mouth of Elkhorn Slough, another monitoring team heads out. Elkhorn Slough is the second largest tidal marsh in California. Draining the rich agricultural lands of the Salinas Valley, the slough is home to rafts of lounging sea otters, harbor seals, and more than 200 species of shorebirds and seabirds. Tim Marisich and his wife Donna steer their fishing vessel, the Donna Kathleen, out to sea. When Tim lost his spot prawn fishery, he turned his expertise to monitoring. Tim is helping scientists gather baseline data to document changes below diver depth.
We've worked from Eureka down to San Diego for the last 5 years doing baseline ROV work for the monitoring enterprise with MARI and with DF&G. And I think that's been my most fulfilling work.
While Rick, Jim, and Tim monitor resources from ships and submersibles, additional teams monitor from land. Formerly a Coast Guard station, Año Nuevo now serves as a vital safe haven for seals, sea lions, and seabirds. Just 50 miles south of San Francisco, this reserve hosts one of the world's largest mainland populations of breeding northern elephant seals. Thousands of pups are born here every year. Biologist Michelle Hester knows firsthand the benefits of these habitats for her feathered research subjects.
And these protected areas are important because they are the reason that a lot of the seabird populations in California have recovered, essentially, from many years of decline.
Today, she and her team are restoring native plant species and building artificial nest sites.
Today we were bringing out native plants, and one of the most important things we're doing on Año Nuevo Island is protecting the habitat for California's breeding seabirds. It's a really rare piece of real estate. There's hardly any land for seabirds that don't have predators or aren't disturbed by human development. And a native plant community actually protects seabirds, even seabirds that live underground.
As Michelle's teams bolster nesting areas, ecologist Dan Robinette and his teams gather data farther down the coast. Dan has been studying California seabirds since 1999.
A lot of times when people think of seabirds, they think of the very charismatic species, the albatross, the pelicans. But the California coastline has a whole suite of coastally breeding seabirds, the cormorants, the guillemots, that do stay close to shore, that do forage in these MPAs, and they will benefit from the protection that these MPAs offer.
Much of Dan's work requires hours of patient observation.
You can learn a lot about the fish and the invertebrates by studying the diet and the foraging habits of these birds.
One bird offering insight into the health of the waters is the black oyster catcher.
The black oyster catchers are really specialized for foraging in the intertidal. They have a long chisel-shaped bill that allows them to pry limpids off the rocks and tear the meat out of the limpid shell, and even to pry open mussel shells.
For Dan, working with seabirds is like having another partner in the field. Their foraging behaviors reveal hidden secrets about invertebrate populations. Seabirds can also illuminate how rapidly fish populations are reproducing and growing, a process ecologists call recruitment. With state support, Dan and his team have expanded their study sites from Bodega Head down to the Mexican border.
So by looking at where the seabirds are foraging, understanding what types of fish they're taking each year, that should give us an idea of what areas are important to protect.
It may be too early to measure impacts, but seabirds should benefit from less contact with human activity. These areas also provide safe haven for many prey species. And wherever prey abounds, predators are sure to follow.
So we're really fortunate here in California that running along our coast is one of the wildest places on Earth, the California current. And what we've learned in this decade and a half of putting new technology in the ocean is right here may be one of the hottest places on the planet, the blue Serengeti, equivalent to Africa, equivalent to the places where we've got the watering holes where zebras and gazelles and elephants are together, but our animals are blue whales, bluefin, leatherback, and white sharks.
Using state-of-the-art tracking technology, Barbara Block and her Tagging of Pacific Pelagics project, TOP, have tracked some of the ocean's most feared and revered animals. With more than 270,000 tracking days from 23 different species, her team is revealing the wild vitality of the California current. Secret foraging regions, spawning areas, and transoceanic migration highways connecting the eastern and western Pacific. And while many of these species travel thousands of miles, California's protected areas play an essential role in their livelihood. They also provide living laboratories for scientists.
By creating reserves such as Año Nuevo, we have a place where elephant seals and white sharks, two natural predator and prey, can be close to one another, and our tags show that they go as far as 4,000 to 5,000 miles away every year. And then what's amazing is the tags then show they come back and are within feet of each other again. And by having the reserve, we've created a location where the natural predator and prey relationships exist, not disturbed by fishing vessels or human interactions with these animals, and it becomes this natural site that we can study, we can actually observe, and we can understand these animals even further.
One person keenly aware of the importance of charismatic ocean animals is commercial dive operator Phil Samet. Last year alone, Phil spent more than 200 days underwater. Diving has been his lifelong passion.
If you had asked me at 11 years old, I would have told you, I'm going to be Jacques Cousteau.
For more than 20 years, Phil has explored the waters of Monterey Bay and beyond with unbound enthusiasm. He brings filmmakers, scientists, and recreational divers underwater to enjoy, investigate, and film the wonders of the California coast. This isn't how Phil first started working here when he was employed by the dive boat Cypress Sea.
In '87, I started working the boat as a deckhand, and the boat primarily was taking out recreational divers who were fishermen. And the amount of take between 1987 and 1995 was very high. I mean, our goal was to spear as many fish as possible on that boat.
Now, Phil's clientele is more interested in shooting pictures instead of spear guns. The overall goals have changed, and that's what's now paying his bills. Of all his dive sites, Point Lobos stands among his favorites. Designated as the nation's first marine park in 1960, Point Lobos' boundaries were expanded to include greater protection in 2007. Spectacular topside scenery barely hints at the deep beauty beneath the waves. More fish and larger individuals of cabezon, lingcod, and rockfish can be found here than on any of the neighboring reefs. A watery tribute to the park's many decades of protection and an irresistible draw for divers and filmmakers. Point Lobos is also famous for two pupping beaches, hidden alcoves where curious harbor seals learn the intricacies of seal life and teach divers a thing or two about playing underwater. A strong conservation ethic continues to spread across the state as more and more programs offer ways for the public to engage. The tide is certainly shifting.
Well, I hope that the marine protected areas become increasingly ingrained in the fabric of our communities. And I hope that as time goes on and generations come to accept it, they'll become stewards of the areas and take care of them.
All the growing pains have led to a groundbreaking achievement, a network of hope spots, and a powerful legacy for California's future.